everyone to our webinar today. My name is Cindy Brunig, and I work at STCC STIC, as we call our beloved college, as Violence Prevention Coordinator. And I just want to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today. We are thrilled with the turnout for our very special event, our virtual keynote speaker, Rosalia Rivera, who will be speaking about building consent culture online, an incredibly timely and relevant topic for our experiences currently, as so many of us have to seek out our social connections, less by being in person with people and more through the online realm. So again, like I said, my name is Cindy Brunig. I work at STIC as Violence Prevention Coordinator. Building Consent Culture Online is an event being held in recognition of National Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And this event truly is but one of many different forms of ongoing prevention programming that we offer to our campus and community partners, because STIC recognizes that issues such as domestic and dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking are widespread across our country. They affect all of our communities. And it is really upon all of us, and our goal here at STIC is really to make a concerted effort with campus and community partners, both to build a supportive response for survivors who have experienced these issues, as well as carry out comprehensive prevention efforts in order to really reduce the number of people who are impacted by these forms of violence in our community and the communities that we serve. So again, welcome everyone. Just a couple of key pieces of information before we get started. In a moment, we're going to be passing it off to a couple of our other co-sponsors to speak to a couple of important details before we introduce our very special guest speaker, Rosalia Rivera. So I'll just touch upon one thing for folks that's important to know for all of you, that this event is being recorded today. It will be available for view, so if anyone has to leave early, or if you're really excited about what you learned today, you want to share it later with friends, we are going to be making the link available for view for those of us who are not able to join live. Another key piece, and we'll be meeting some of our co-sponsors in a moment, is that this event is a collaborative effort. We are co-sponsored by the Be Empowered Project, which is a part of our work through the Office of Violence Against Women Campus Program Grant, the Title IX office here at STIC that has very generously offered to support hosting the speaker today, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and the Hispanic Association of Higher Education. So we have an incredibly collaborative group that's come together to put this on today. Another really key piece of information is that, as many of you know, the content that we are going to touch upon today is going to include topics that are about sexual and relationship violence. And we know that these issues, as I already said, are widespread, and that many of us who are joining today may have been impacted directly and or indirectly at some point in our lifetimes and or currently by these issues. And with that in mind, we want to be very proactive about offering resources for support for anyone who wants someone to talk to now, later today, next week, as a result of this event, as a result of whatever may come up as we engage today. And so I, at this moment, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Sarah Mikesell, and she's going to share about some of those support resources that are available.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Mikesell. I am the free and confidential YWCA campus advocate here at STIC. I offer counseling, support, and advocacy to students, faculty, and staff who have been impacted by domestic or dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. If at any point during this event or after this event, like Cindy said, if you'd like individual support, you can reach me during business hours at 413-732-3121, extension 308. And if you need help outside of business hours, the YWCA's 24-hour sexual and domestic violence hotline is available at 413-733-7100. And we encourage you to take a screenshot of this slide if you'd like to save those numbers. I'll give you a moment to do that, and then I'll pass it back to Cindy.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. Just so folks know, we will be sharing those numbers at different points today. Rosalia will also be excuse me, sharing them on some of her slides as she goes through her talk. So if you didn't get a chance to take that screenshot, it will be repeated a few times throughout our event today. I also want folks to know that I just put into the chat for panelists and attendees a link to the STIC website. Our campus program grant through the Office of Violence Against Women, we have what's called the Coordinated Community Response Team. And this is a group of both campus and community partners who are combining our efforts to address these issues. And we have a fantastic team. Some folks who are attending today are part of that team, and certainly our co-sponsors are as well. And we have put together an extensive list of resources for domestic and dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on the STIC website. And the key piece about this list is that it details everything that is available to you right now, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, and how you can access it. So I shared that link in the chat. All right, without further ado, I am now going to pass it to one of our esteemed colleagues and co-sponsors, Vanetta Lightfoot from the Office of Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Vanetta Lightfoot, and I am the Operations Manager for the Office of Multicultural Affairs at STCC. Multicultural Affairs provides culturally specific educational programming, diversity and inclusion initiatives, and student and community engagement. Multicultural Affairs supports the college's commitment to building a diverse and inclusive climate on campus while creating an environment that is both safe and welcoming for all students to be successful. I am also a very proud partner for this event today, so thank you all for being here. Just a few housekeeping things to reiterate what Cindy was saying earlier. Our event today will consist of a 45-minute keynote address, followed by 15 minutes of question and answer from the audience. Participants will be muted for the duration of the event, and please post any questions you have for the speaker in the chat. The event host will be monitoring the chat and will gather questions and answers for you at the end. Again, this event will be recorded and available for those who could not attend live. I will now pass it to my colleague, Jennifer, from the Hispanic Association of Higher Education. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Vanetta. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Wallace Johnson, and I am the co-chair of the Hispanic Association in Higher Education here at STCC. And as a representative of the Hispanic Association during this difficult time, this couldn't be a more timely event in honor of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This is a wonderful opportunity to spread awareness, engage one another, collaborate as a community, and to keep each other safe. This is the time that we together should adapt and overcome. This event speaks to the mission of the Hispanic Association, and we couldn't be more proud to be a co-sponsor. Therefore, it is an honor and a privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today. Rosalia Rivera is a passionate consent educator, sexual literacy advocate, speaker, change agent, and survivor turned thriver. She is the host of About Consent, a podcast for survivors and those who support survivors. Rosalia is also the founder of CONSENTparenting, an online platform for survivor parents to learn how to protect their families from abuse. And she is soon launching CONSENTwear, a clothing brand for kids, teens, and adults to create consent culture. Her mission is threefold. Number one, to help parents and caregivers to empower the children in their lives through consent education and eradicate child sexual abuse. Number two, to help childhood sexual trauma survivors find their voice, rediscover their power, and reclaim their innate sexual divinity. Number three, to dismantle shame around sexuality through education and awareness. Welcome, Rosalia. I am now going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to start with just saying thank you to Jennifer, Vanetta, Sarah, and of course, Cindy. I'm just going to share this for one quick second. Can you just confirm, I want to make sure everyone can see my screen for a minute.
Yes, we can, Rosalia.
Okay, perfect. And okay, let's see. And all right, I'm back. So I wanted to begin by sharing a story that happened in 2003. It happened on January 1st, New Year's. I apologize, it's actually 2002. A lot happened between 2002 and 2003, but I want to start with sharing this one particular event that happened on the night of New Year's Day. And this was a regular night, starting the year fresh. This was a regular night with family. Dinner had been served and eaten. And shortly after dinner, a 13-year-old girl asked her family if she could go lie down because she wasn't feeling very well. And soon after, she had disappeared. Her parents had no clue, no idea where she had gone to. And there were no traces. Her jacket was at home, her boots, anything that would have indicated that she left the house, there was no sign. What ended up happening was a series of events that had begun 8 months earlier. You see, 8 months earlier, this girl, we'll name her Alicia, had met someone online. And she had met this person solely online, not in real life, and had been introduced to this person who had said that they were also 13, just like her, and began a friendship. They had been introduced by a mutual friend, so she had no reason to suspect that this person was anyone other than who they said they were. And over the course of 8 months, they developed a very strong friendship, a very close bond. Anytime that Alicia would get into a fight with her parents, this person who claimed to be 13 would comfort her. If she got a bad grade in school, that person would say, "Oh, that teacher's stupid. You're smart, you know better." And little by little, over the course of 8 months, this person gained her trust, her affection. And because she thought that this person was 13 and was connecting with her, speaking her language, encouraging her, was always there for her, really became her confidant, she had no reason to raise a red flag to anyone to say, something's odd here. Now, this person claimed to be from a neighboring city. And, again, she had no reason to doubt or question if the validity of this person was true because they had been connected through a mutual friend who she did know in real life. So over the course of 8 months, they bantered and had this really great connection. And she really felt that she connected with someone who truly understood her and who was always there for her, who made her feel like the most special person in the world. And don't get me wrong, she didn't even have a tumultuous home life. She was actually someone who was really bonded with her parents and had a really good relationship with her siblings. It was a peaceful home life. There were no red flags raised. Now, this boy had told her that he was actually going to be in her town visiting family because it was New Year's. And, she could just sneak out for 5 minutes to meet him in person, finally, after all this time. Now, because she had no reason to have any red flags, she decided to just tell her parents because they didn't really know about this friendship that had started kind of turning a little bit romantic and had started really becoming something that she wanted to become more of an in-person, real-life friendship / potential relationship. She's 13. discovering her new interests in boys, and thought, I won't necessarily tell my parents, but I'll just say that I wasn't really feeling well and sneak out for just a minute to go meet this friend. So she did, and told her mom that she was going to go lie down because she didn't feel well. But instead, she snuck out the front door in a very cold night in Pittsburgh. And when she was outside in the dark, very cold, with no jacket, some slippers, just to go meet this person down the block, she was standing there thinking, what are you doing, Alicia? And that little voice inside her said, you should go home. And she turned around to start going home, but she heard her name called. And it was in that moment that a 38-year-old man grabbed her hand, threw her in his car, and abducted her, drove 5 hours across state lines, and made her his prisoner. Now, for 4 days, this 13-year-old girl who had met this stranger online was abused and believed that she was not going to make it. The person who had abducted her had live streamed her abuse to a network on the dark web. This was someone who was a computer programmer and knew how to be able to do this covertly. And by sheer luck, the person on the other end, one of the persons on the other end, contacted the FBI because they had recognized her image. This girl recognized her image as someone that they had seen a missing poster for. She had been put on the missing child and exploited children's network, and her parents had started on the search. And this person who saw her made the connection that that was the same girl, called the FBI, and they were able, 1 in a million chance, were able to trace back to the IP address, found the house, and rescued her. Now, this was in 2002. And quite honestly, it was what seemed like a miracle, because this girl, Alicia Kozak, as she is now known, is the 13-year-old girl that I was talking about. She is now someone who advocates for internet safety. She has her own project, the Alicia Project, and actually went on to help create a law in many states that is enacted now in many states. Very new, and it was still something that parents didn't understand, that there could be very dangerous people on the other end. Alicia's project, which helped to create Alicia's law that tasks law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, with finding online predators and connecting the dots between sexual abuse material of children, which used to be called child pornography. They are overwhelmed today because the problem hasn't improved. It hasn't gotten better. We haven't gotten a hold of how to prevent these kinds of things from happening. In fact, today, it's gotten much worse in how predators are abducting or trafficking or connecting with victims, whether it is an online exploitation or eventually leads to an offline exploitation. And I just want to share this again so that you can see. This was a story that came out September 10th, 2019.
Rosalia, just real quick, we don't see a picture. We just see the Zoom screen on your internet.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to let you know that we couldn't see that.
Thank you for that. Is that better? Are you able to see the other
Yes,
screen?
that is better. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so this is what's happening today. This is what is more commonly the result of grooming, which is what happened to Alicia. Alicia was the victim of what most parents are unaware of, which is a process called grooming. It is something that can happen to children offline, but it is also something that can happen online. And the reason that it's important for you to understand what grooming is that it doesn't just happen to kids or teenagers. It happens all the way up to where most research that's been done on this now is mostly for women 25 and under. So if you are a college student or even graduated and are 25 and under, you are still someone that is going to be targeted, potentially targeted by what are now called Romeo pimps. And the scary part of this is that, a lot of these aspects are scary, but one of the scary parts of this is that because of how we interact online on a normal, regular basis, we can be targeted. So I'm going to talk about what those ways are, who is specifically targeted, why they're targeted, and how we can start to create a more robust consent culture online that will, number one, prevent us from becoming targeted, and number two, to start becoming a support network for others who could potentially be targeted. And the reason it's so important to understand about Romeo pimps is because if we don't know that this is going on, we can't take the necessary steps to prevent ourselves and others from becoming victims. So essentially, Romeo pimps are people who, and I want to use the term people specifically because it isn't just males who are doing this, but also women. So men and women are considered Romeo pimps. And what they're doing is using methods that are based on grooming, which I'll explain in a minute, to lure young, usually women, but also men, by posing as boyfriends or people that care, romantic interests who are trying to feign that they are, have the best interest of the other person in mind who they are trying to lure. And the scary part is that this is eventually what leads to human trafficking. So these Romeo pimps are that sort of in between to human trafficking. Human trafficking victims are often persons that are extremely vulnerable. So they may come from vulnerable populations, migrant workers, new immigrants, indigenous, people of color. So particularly those who are youth, because they will typically not have information about internet safety that's being given at home or at school in a comprehensive way. Also at-risk youth, so those who are also socially or economically disadvantaged, as well as LGBTQ youth are also at a higher risk. And as well, there is also an increase in the number of traffickers who are recruiting victims online. So there has been a spike that has happened over the last few years, particularly because traffickers can work independently or as part of an organization. Traffickers may find victims through social media or through dating apps. This is something that is scary in the fact that, most people think dating apps are, they should be safe, right? This is something that everyone is doing today. I, in fact, met my husband on a dating site about 14 years ago now. So I understand that this can seem like a terrifying, piece of news that now dating sites or dating apps or even social media can be so dangerous at any age. I talk a lot and I educate parents on safety when it comes to their children. But a lot of teenagers, once they've reached a certain point, a certain age, feel that they know already. There's no way that they could be victimized or that someone could pull the wool over their eyes. And unfortunately, this is what abusers and offenders and perpetrators are banking on. They're banking on our lack of education, lack of awareness. And that's why it's so important that we become educated on these topics and become more media literate, which is one of the things that I think we still continue to lack even as adults. And traffickers are one thing that, when I say Romeo pimps, a lot of people who have heard of this term think of people who are flashy or who drive flashy cars or have a lot of money, or they're flashing that they have a lot of money, but they are really, there is no one determining factor of who would become a trafficker. And what their currency is really is persuasion, manipulation, and false promises. And they are looking for persons who are vulnerable. So when we are talking about who is it that they're going after persons who have gaps that they know they can fill. And so a lot of times that can be someone who is, posting online very innocently on their own social media that they're struggling with certain things, or maybe they're having a challenging experience at home with their parents. What brings this to the forefront today, particularly during COVID, this quarantine, is that because we are so separated and not able to have those same connections that we had when everything was in person, the increase of online grooming is spiking. And in fact, in Canada, where I live, there has been a report of 40% increase in tips to CyberTip lines that help with, trying to find those abusers who are exploiting children online. The tip line has gone up by 40% of people calling in, parents calling in, because there are so many cases now of people that are trying to connect with children. And so when a lot of people hear that, they tend to think that, well, I'll safeguard my children, or I'll, prevent them from being able to go online as much. The truth is that we need to be more educated and more aware about our own practices and habits, regardless of age. And one of the things that's really important that I talk to parents a lot about is the fact that we are an oversharing society. We have taken to social media specifically to share about all aspects of our lives. And when I talk to parents about this, I let them know that it's really important that they stop what has even now been coined as sharenting, which is parents that share way too much about their kids. What happens is that there are a lot of people, a lot of predators who are scanning these sites on social media for kids or for their parents or for youth. So even for those Romeo pimps that are, trafficking girls and boys and women and men, they are specifically looking for those persons who are posting about struggles that they're going through, or that they are oversharing information about their private lives or their personal lives. I talk about this with parents and how through their own actions, they are modeling to their kids what's okay and not okay to share about online. So when it comes to your own life, one of the things that I teach when it comes to media literacy is to think about what is it that you are sharing and why. What is the goal of what you're sharing? What is the purpose that you are putting this information out for? Because if you don't have strong privacy settings for your social media accounts, and someone can very visibly see that you're having some kind of struggle with your family members or with persons in your life, someone could very easily find that information. Obviously, we know now that our digital fingerprints are things that is information that lives online forever. And so when we are talking about good media literacy, we're talking about also understanding that our digital footprint carries on and is very easy now for people to research information about us. So being more careful and aware about the kind of information that we post online is really important. But also understanding the concept of grooming. And so essentially what grooming is a way for a predator to gain the trust and access to the person that they eventually want to manipulate and abuse. And so it starts with gaining their trust. And unfortunately, what a lot of people don't realize, because when they think of online predators, they tend to think of people that are sending, lurid images or explicit content or asking them for that. But it's not the case. What happens is that over time, they gain the trust of a person. When we had the contact of offline before, where we were, in person before COVID, someone would potentially, become so involved and so romantic with a person, and then they would eventually get to the point where they would say that they would need help because there was some situation, and if this, if the girl or the guy could help them out by selling sex just for a few times to get them out of this tight spot, that would be the very first step to incriminating. Another process that would lead, that would be happening after grooming, is that that person would become more aggressive. And if they've given them gifts, they would say that those gifts weren't for free, and now this person owes them, and so they would feel entrapped by that. Another process that happens after grooming is that perhaps if they somehow introduce them to drugs and were able to isolate them from their other support system, then they would convince them that those people actually don't care about them, and so they're the only ones that care about them. The trafficker or the abuser would make them feel that they were truly alone and had no resources to call upon for help. And lastly, they would threaten them directly. So this would be a situation where if the person has divulged so much about their life online or trusted the person through this grooming process so much that now they feel this person knows so much about me and my family, and they're threatening them that now their family is in a vulnerable position, they would feel cornered and unable to seek help. So what happens is that a lot of people don't realize grooming can happen slowly and over time, because when you look at those results, you'd say, how could somebody fall for that? How could somebody be so easily manipulated into those situations? But the problem is that grooming happens slowly. It can happen over weeks, and it can even happen over months. In the case of Alicia, the story that I told you about in the beginning, this person took 8 months to gain the trust of this child. And when we are older, we tend to think, well, I would probably spot some red flags at that point. But the truth is that these pimps are so manipulative. They're so well versed in what they do that they will overcome those barriers of people thinking, oh, well, there's no way that I would be fooled. Because the truth is that trafficking, the value of a victim in the trafficking market is up to $300,000 per year per person being trafficked. So yeah, there are organizations that recruit pimps to do this kind of work. And even the ones who are not working with organizations and are doing this independently realize that the value of a person being trafficked is so much more than even trying to deal in drugs or other criminal activities, because unlike drugs, which get used and have to be replaced, a person can be used over and over again, obviously against their will and in criminal ways. So it's really important for us to know that there are ways for us to create consent culture, online as well as offline. And obviously right now we're talking about how can we do this online. So there are some red flags that we do need to be aware of as we are thinking about all of this, because we may realize that, you know, we're in a relationship with someone, we haven't met this person. If we, you know, met them through a dating app or even through someone who connected us, it's important that we know what our boundaries are, and that if anyone ever, if you ever feel that someone is trying to cross those boundaries, that ever make you feel uncomfortable, that ever make you feel like something is wrong here, number one, it's important to listen to your gut instinct. It never steers you wrong. And if your gut instinct is telling you that that feels inappropriate, it doesn't feel right to you, then vocalize that and do something about ending that relationship if it continues. So no one should be asking you for things that make you feel uncomfortable, that is inappropriate, and is continuously doing it. So if you feel that this is starting to feel like a harassment, and that can be tricky, because if someone's gained your trust and suddenly they're asking in a way that still feels like they're making it not like such a criminal thing to do, but, you know, it's just this one time, or it's just this one little thing, they're testing to see if your boundaries can be moved, if you are willing to give an inch, because they'll keep chipping away at those inches. So it's important that we vocalize what our boundaries are. We can start to create consent culture by talking about the fact that we stand for consent, that we stand for strong boundaries. It's important to do the work of learning what our boundaries are and then developing them so that we can learn how to implement them. If you are someone who has experienced abuse in the past, this might be a bit of a difficult exercise because it's new, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that it's something new that we need to practice. And it's important that we practice this while we are having more and more interactions online, because online it can seem like, well, it's just something that happened online. It didn't happen in real life. But online is still real life, because these are still interactions that we are having with persons who are trying to see just how far they can get. And so it's important for us to verbalize and communicate. If someone is asking for you to send explicit images and you're not comfortable with that, and they push you to the point where you feel that you either have to do this or something's wrong, this is where it's important to seek support. And we'll talk about that in a second, but it's important. And the reason that I put these this list lined out like this is because it's also important for us to know that we can also talk about these things openly with everyone in our circles, in our community of friends and family. That when we're talking about creating consent culture, and one thing is to just do it, but another thing is also to be vocal about it. So if there is a community of friends that hang out online, talking about, hey, I took this course on learning about how to create consent culture, and this is what I learned, and sharing that information. Sharing information that empowers everyone is how we start to create consent culture. Letting people know that respecting boundaries is important to you is creating consent culture. Letting people know that they have the right to say no to something, that they have the right to stop a situation that they're uncomfortable with from continuing, is creating consent culture. And we can be good upstanders instead of just bystanders. So if there is something that you've seen is inappropriate for someone else, let them know that you realize that they may need support, that they may need help with something, and how can you support them? How can you help them? How can you get them resources so that you aren't allowing that person to just go through something if you've witnessed it. So it's important that we talk about it, that we create consent culture just simply by communicating. A lot of times we tend to think that someone else is communicating, so we don't have to. Someone else posted something about it, so it's obviously being talked about. But if we can share more information online, if we can let our friends know, a lot of times when we look at situations like this, we think it would never happen to me, but maybe it's happening to your friend. Maybe it's happening to someone you don't know, but they haven't raised any red flags, so why would you be concerned? And so creating consent culture also means reaching out to your network of friends and family to say, I've learned about this, and I've come to learn that we all need a support system. We all need to know that there are people who will always believe us, who will support us, who will not shame us for our decisions, because a lot of times, we make mistakes, we're all human, but we're afraid to tell someone, I trusted a person, they, made me do this thing that I didn't want to do, and now I feel trapped. And I don't want to tell anyone because I feel ashamed of the fact that I did this one thing and now they're holding it against me. And that's what these abusers, perpetrators, and people that are trying to traffic others are banking on, is that they can take advantage of someone feeling ashamed, of someone making a mistake, and alienating them from their communities so that they can't seek support and help to get out of that situation. So a lot of times it's up to us to reach out to those friends and say, this new reality can lead to these things, and I just want to let you know that I'm someone who will never judge you, who will always believe you, and who can help you find help. If you do not have people that you feel that you can reach out to, you're a lot less likely to seek that support. And so it's one of the reasons why it's also so important for everyone to be made aware of what those additional resources are. In the beginning, there were phone numbers that were put for reaching support, for seeking support, either on campus or off campus, and to know that there are organizations that are specifically there to help for this reason. So if there is any reason why someone would say, I really don't want to reach out to my network of friends or family because I am so ashamed of whatever it is, know that there are organizations out there that can help, that there's always a way out. But beyond that, it's also important to note that as someone who is a survivor myself, it's really critical to have the awareness and the understanding that you are never at fault. And it is never your fault if you are abused, if something has happened to you in the past and your abuser told you that you are to blame for what happened. It is part of the lie that they need to keep in order to keep that information secret. But it is never your fault, and it is nothing to have shame over because you did nothing wrong. And so I want to stress that, because online it may seem like something that can be kept, in the closet, or if as long as, I keep doing this, then this secret won't come out and I won't be shamed. Excuse me. But it's important to note that that is never the case. You are never to blame. And we are creating consent culture by the fact that we're having this presentation, that we're talking openly about this, and that we are letting others know that there is always a way out, that there are resources, and shame does not belong on the shoulders of a victim ever. That is something that I learned through the years of unpacking my own experiences and abuses that happened to me, and to realize that regardless of what happened, because I used to believe that it was my fault, and I used to believe that I had put myself in that situation, and so I couldn't tell anyone because I had shame, and people would point the fingers at me. So for a long time, I didn't report and I didn't tell anyone. But I've learned over time that I didn't need to live with that shame and guilt for as long as I did, because it was never mine to bear, and it is never the survivor's fault. So I just want to make sure that as we are thinking about how we create consent culture, that is always on the front line of awareness, is that shame is something that is ultimately toxic, and just everyone needs to know that we ultimately all make mistakes, regardless of what those circumstances were. Many times it's either a threat, a bribe, or a lie that has led us to make those mistakes. And so ultimately it is never the fault of the victim. And in particular with online cases, this is one of the things that is most reported once a victim is rescued, is that they felt that they were at fault and felt shame and couldn't seek support. So taking the step of reaching out to all of your friends, whether you believe that they are at risk or not, it's important for us to let them know that we are there for them, that we won't be a bystander, and we can support and not judge whatever it is that has happened. So I encourage you all to do that one thing today, which will help create more consent culture in our communities, in our homes, in our friendships, and around the world, is to support everyone, male or female, regardless of gender, race, or anything. We are all human and we all deserve the support of each other. And this is one essential way that we can begin to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalia, for that great presentation. This is Jennifer again, and I'm just going to assist in opening this up for some question and answers. So we ask that if you have a question for Rosalia, if you can type it in the question and answer section. There is a tab, should be on the bottom of your screen, where you can type in a question for her, and then I will certainly give as many to her as I can in the next 15 minutes or so. So feel free to do that. In the meantime, we do have a few, so I can start with asking Rosalia, can you share an example of how parents can explain these important issues to young children?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first ways when kids are young is that I always talk about using the example of, first of all, it's important to talk about these topics even before kids get online. But if you haven't had that opportunity and taken the time to do that yet, when it comes to online, I always like to use the term of tricky people. And I give parents the examples that they can use from media or books, even characters and stories, where they can give examples of what tricky people are, so that they can begin to use those examples for kids to understand. So, and one simple example is the movie Frozen. There's a character who's the prince, and he pretends to be this amazing person. He actually makes Anna, who's I think the sister, fall in love. And it turns out in the end that he's actually this really bad guy who wants to kill everybody. But in the movie, it's a really perfect example of what a tricky person is. And there's two parts to that. One is that it helps kids understand that, one, they have to be critical thinkers. They have to really question, if they don't really know someone, they've just met them, to not just take someone's, information and just run with it, that it's important to verify. And this is one of the things that I talk about in media literacy is for parents to teach kids, is that when it comes to media, it's important to understand why people are putting media on either the internet or on TV. What is the goal of that media? So as an example, if kids are watching a video on YouTube and suddenly an ad pops up, excuse me one second. If an ad pops up, it's important to talk about what that ad is. It's created by a company who's trying to sell something. And it gets kids to start thinking more critically about the media that they're consuming. And then when it comes to persons that they're interacting with, that it's important to talk about privacy and not sharing private information, because you don't know who is on the other end of the screen, even if they're saying that they are so-and-so. And so that's where you would introduce the concept of tricky people. And unfortunately, there are people in the world who, you know, aren't as good as everyone, you know, and I think parents are a little bit afraid of talking about, you know, scaring their kids. But the truth is that if you look at the media that kids are already consuming, it's always about the good guys and the bad guys. So if you always can pull references from the media that your kids are already consuming, it helps them to understand it in context. Another example that I also use for older kids is the Harry Potter novels. Even if you don't read the books, you can watch the movies, and there's several characters who in the beginning seem to be good, but it turns out that they're not. And so becoming more critical thinkers is part of media literacy and helping kids to understand those concepts of being cautious online, but also to question who is it and why are they posting what they're posting, whether it's a person or if it's some other kind of media. So let me know if that helps you understand that.
Awesome, thank you. So I do have another one. How can I be an ally to survivors in my own family and community?
So that's a great question, because a lot of times if someone comes to you with a disclosure and they haven't specifically asked you for something, like if they've disclosed, a lot of times what we tend to want to do is like fix the thing that happened, or to reassure them that, you know, it's okay, and, you know, maybe forget about what happened in the past or move forward. It's, you know, a lot of times people are unprepared with how to respond to a disclosure. What is most important is for you to ask the person how you can support them. Because if they haven't already vocalized that, they may not quite know just yet, and they may just need you to hold space for them. And so if we make it a practice of asking, how can I support you? What can I do to, you know, to help you in your journey with this? It's going to be difficult for, you know, you tend to want to just respond by giving them the things that you think that they need, instead of asking them how to support them. So one is to let them know that you are there, that you're an ally, and that, you know, whenever they need your support, you're available, and to just let you know what it is that they need from you so that you can support them. If you are a spouse of someone who is a survivor and they've just spoken to you about this for the first time, that's a really great starting point, is to say, let me know what I can do to support you. But then I also recommend for the partner to seek support as well, because a lot of times we may not know what to do or how to talk about these things. And if we say the wrong thing, it may end up causing other issues communication-wise. So I always recommend that educating yourself on how you can be a support, or getting your own support so that you can be a greater support even for that partner, is also quite important. So looking for the answer within yourself is not really helpful. It's always important to ask that person, how can I support you? What would you like me to do to support you with this, you know, this journey of healing, or this new disclosure? You know, I know that it's difficult to talk about, but, you know, let me know how I can support you, and then start from that point.
Great, thank you so much. And we do have another here. Where can we find further information on the topics that were discussed today?
Yeah, so there are various websites. I mean, it depends on if you're looking for resources for kids or older adults. But the Alicia Project is a really great starting point, because she has lots of resources from there as well that are specific to internet safety. On my website, I also have information as well. I do lots of videos where I go live and talk about also what parents can do if they do come across this kind of information. So one of the things that's also important to know is, as a parent, if your child, or even as an adult really, but if your child is, you know, realizing that they have been groomed or they're being asked for explicit or inappropriate images or information, the very first thing that you should be doing is actually screenshotting or saving as much information as you can about those exchanges. Do not block the person. Make sure that you contact law enforcement right away. Don't give that person on the other end of the screen any tip that you're onto them, because you want law enforcement to be able to track them, and they'll give you the cues of what to do next. So a lot of parents will freeze and, delete or block that person. And unfortunately, they may be doing it to other people. So you've lost that ability to find that person and get them, get law enforcement to connect with them and arrest them. So ideally, learning about what those next steps are is important, like what to do if you are a parent. But even if you are someone, if you're a young adult or adult who is experiencing any kind of harassment or abuse, it's important to do the same steps. So make sure that you are trying to document as much as you can about the exchange, because that person will try to delete everything on their end, and then seek, on any kind of resource that you can, whether it's law enforcement or an organization that specializes in this, something like cybertips.com or cybertips.ca. Can help with those kinds of situations. And they also offer information on their websites about how to educate yourself more on this topic.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that information, Rosalia. And I really enjoyed co-hosting this with you. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Cindy for some final thoughts.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so many thanks and so much virtual applause for Rosalia. What an amazing wealth of storytelling, of examples, of wisdom, guidance, and information that you shared with us today. So we just extend so much gratitude for you, because we cannot clap, we can do the sparkling hands to really show our gratitude for you today, Rosalia. For folks who have attended today, please look in the chat. I just shared both two of Rosalia's websites, the About Consent Podcast website, as well as Consent Parenting. Please, obviously, Rosalia has given us some excellent guidance today, and some really concrete next steps that we can take to do something, to take this information that we have learned and start the conversation, if we haven't already, with our families and friends and our social networks. And a great way to follow up on today's talk is to check out Rosalia's platform. Her podcast is phenomenal, and she offers ongoing support and workshops, how-tos for parents on her Consent Parenting platform as well online. So please check out her information. As you are leaving, I believe that, this is our first time doing something like this, like a virtual event, but I believe Zoom has in it a survey that we created just to get some of your feedback as attendees. Your feedback is so important to us. So we know what you took from today's event, what you might do with it, any questions you have remaining, as well as your thoughts for future topics that we could offer as events for our STIC community and community partners in the future. For more information or to get more involved in the ongoing work we are doing on campus, I have my contact information, my email on this slide. You can also find us on Instagram at the @BeEmpoweredProject. And I just have on this slide as well our support numbers as well, one last time. And before we, just in closing words, what we say at STIC is that prevention truly is about making a difference, and that each and every one of us, from the smallest actions that we take or the smallest decisions we make each and every day for how we show up to engage with our own circles of influence, can truly make a difference. It can truly be the contribution that is necessary to shape our communities and make a better world. So as you all leave today, just take that picture of that world that you wish we could be creating together, the world that you would like to live in, and think about, what is that one small thing that I can do today to be a part of shaping that world. And I think Rosalia has given us some amazing guidance as a first step in taking this conversation to our loved ones with what we've learned today. So thank you all so much. We look forward to the next time that we will be engaging with each other, whether in person or online. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. All right, so this webinar will now be ending, and check out the link once we post it online if you want to view or share with your family and friends. Thank you.